I feel like if I'm a defender right now, I'm Jessica Jones because I'm just really pessimistic about the whole thing at this point.
And you have a vagina.
and that as well. You want to grab a coffee after this?
No, thank you. That's a hard pass. Welcome, nerds, to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
A little tired. Went over to your place again last night to play board games, and we didn't end up leaving until kind of late, especially for me because I had to work yesterday. So I'd been up since like 5:30, and we ended up playing until like midnight. So yeah, it was a little exhausting, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I had this weird experience the other night. So I hadn't been doing stand-up in a while, and so I kind of wanted to get the rust off a little bit. I have a couple of shows coming up, or I'm trying to book a couple of shows, and so I wanted to record some of my stuff, and so I went to an open mic to do that, and that's not the story I want to tell, but I wanted to ask you something real quick. Have you ever had anybody say that you look like a celebrity?
Like, mistake me for a celebrity or say, you look like that
you
person?
Look like this person.
I mean, I think once, and I forget who the celebrity even was, but I don't know that it was flattering.
Okay.
I can't remember.
So before I tell this story, I want to say that I do not believe this.
So
I do not see it. But I've had multiple people across different years, and there's no way that they would have known each other. And this would be a really weird con if they were trying to con me into believing that I looked like this person. But I've had multiple people, and I don't know if we've had this conversation or not. We definitely haven't had it on the podcast. Tell me that I look like Giovanni Ribisi. Multiple people. So the other night, I was just chit-chatting with a couple other comedians that were doing this open mic, and one of the women that was standing near me was like, "Oh yeah, you look like Giovanni Ribisi." And this is the third person in the last, I would say, 6 years that has told me that. And I don't understand it. I don't see it. I just think it's really weird. So when I was student teaching, I had one of my students that told me that, and I thought it would, first of all, I was flattered because, I mean, he's a good looking guy, but also I was more impressed that he knew that guy's name off the top of his head, but that was kind of strange. I actually had to look it up because I did not know that was his name.
Yeah.
And so, I was like, okay, yeah, I don't see it, but cool, man. That's awesome. And then later I was working I was working for the company that I currently work for, but I was doing a different job, and I was going by somebody, and she stopped me, like she flagged me down, and she was like, "You look like this actor." And I was like, and it immediately occurred to me that she might be talking about the same person, but she couldn't remember his name. And for some reason, I don't know why I did this, but for some reason, I pretended like I didn't know his name, but I knew exactly what his name was, because you don't forget a name like Giovanni Ribisi. Once you know it, it's in your head forever. So I like pretended like I didn't know, and then the conversation died down, and I walked away. And then like 2 weeks later, she stopped me again. She's like, "Oh, I found out that guy's name." And I was like, "Oh, yeah. And again, I'm playing coy. I don't know why, but I was pretending like I didn't know his name. And she's like, his name is Kent Raines. And I was like, because that's obviously not who I thought she was going to say. And I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then again, the conversation died down, and I walked away. And then it bothered me because me being such a pop culture nerd, I was like, I don't know that person. Yeah. So I looked it up. That's Giovanni Ribisi's character's name in Gone in 60 Seconds. She saw that movie and thought that was legitimately that guy's name. So I've always kind of laughed. Like, I'll think about it every once in a while, and I'll laugh about it, that she legitimately thought that guy's name was Kent Raines in real life. fast forward to a couple days ago, I had another person tell me that. So that's really, really weird. I don't see it. I'm guessing that you also don't see it.
I don't see it, and I'm trying to put it together. And maybe it's just because, you know, you have a shaved head and he doesn't, and maybe that's what I go to. But maybe in the eyes, I can kind of see it a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And he's not like a famous person. Like, he has bit parts here and there. I mean, Gone in 60 Seconds was his biggest movie, I would say. I mean, he's in Avatar, but he's barely in that movie.
You need to, after this episode goes up, you need to put up a side-by-side on the Facebook so people can decide for themselves.
I actually just thought about doing that, but then I thought it would be better if I just shared the story first, because it's super, super weird.
Yeah, I don't see it, but I mean, enough people are telling you you look like this obscure actor, so yeah. I mean,
again, I was very impressed that she knew his name like right off the top of her head, because it was like immediately like I introduced myself to her and I was talking to this other person, and she just blurted it out. So I thought it was super, super weird. Obviously, there's something there.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't get it.
I think it's the eyes. That's what I'm going with.
All right, cool. All right, so if this is your first episode, we start off each episode by kind of just checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So what are you into this week?
I went and saw Logan Lucky Thursday night, just on a whim. It was kind of between that and the Hitman's Bodyguard, and that wasn't getting good reviews, and Logan Lucky was, so decided to go that route. And I honestly just went to see this because I thought the trailers looked really funny. I didn't really know much about it, and as I got closer to seeing it, I realized that it was directed by Steven Soderbergh. Who,
cool. I did not know that.
He supposedly had retired from film, which I didn't know that either. So at one time, he kind of stepped away, and this is him coming back to film. I think he's directed some other stuff that aren't movies, but this is him coming back to this genre, or this medium, I guess. And it is about two brothers and a sister, the Logan family, that decide that they want to rob a speedway. And they're going to rob a speedway during a car show, so they're not after a lot of money, but things kind of get turned around.
Oh, I thought that you meant like the gas station.
Oh, no, sorry. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a racing guy, but whichever really popular speedways in North Carolina. I don't know. There's a really popular race that this
Rally?
Maybe. That sounds right. But I obviously didn't pay attention that much to what the stadium's name was. But they're going to rob it during this car show because the speedway has tunnels underneath it that the concessions send their money through, kind of like what you get whenever you go through like a bank drive-through. You know how you send the shoot up or whatever the fuck that is? Well, they have those underneath the speedway, and Channing Tatum's character knows about it because he was working...
Charlotte Motor Speedway?
Yeah, sounds right.
Okay.
Because it's in Charlotte. So Channing Tatum knows about it because he's working construction or something underneath it and has seen them. And... like I said, they're going to rob it during this car show. Not a lot of money, but enough money to where they want it, and things get switched around, and they end up having to rob it during the Coca-Cola 600, I think is what it's called, and obviously a giant race for NASCAR and a lot of money, kind of more than they were anticipating. So it kind of shows their planning and the heist involved with that. So... kind of hinted at it. It takes place in North Carolina, and the Logan family is from West Virginia. So right on the border of North Carolina and West Virginia are where we kind of follow the characters. So the hillbilly is very strong with this movie. And if you've seen the
Wonderful Whites?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to bring that up.
No, if you've seen the trailers for this, you're aware that they're all using a fantastic Appalachian accent, and it's really used to its humorous advantage because some of these actors, especially Daniel Craig, who I'll get into, you don't really see in that vein. But I kind of hinted at it. It stars Channing Tatum. Adam Driver plays his brother. Katie Holmes is in it. Seth MacFarlane's in it. Sebastian Stan is in it. And then, of course, I hinted at Daniel Craig being in it, who really is the scene stealer in this movie. He's terrific. His character's name is Joe Bang. And he does a fantastic Appalachian accent, which you wouldn't expect from James Bond. So I've read a couple reviews before I went and saw it, and a lot of people are calling this Redneck Ocean's 11, which is kind of accurate, but it simplifies it a little too much because it really does stand apart from those movies. It's a really fun movie, and
He did those movies, didn't
exactly.
he?
And
Okay,
I think
cool.
that's kind of
that's lazy.
I think that's a lazy comparison because he did those movies, but it's also kind of weird for him to do another heist movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the redneck version of a heist movie. So it's kind of an all around strange situation, but this movie really is a good time and it's nothing but fun. It's one of the better heist movies I'll say that I've seen. But I need to probably rewatch the Ocean movies. I haven't seen those in quite a while, and I think I've only seen them once. So I do remember enjoying at least Ocean's 11. I don't think I was as big a fan of 12 or 13. It has a great pace. It does an amazing job of introducing all of these characters. Obviously, I rattled off a lot of actors that are in this movie, so there's a lot of interweaving stories, and they do a really good job with all that. It does a great job of not telling the audience everything that's going on, kind of like how Ocean's 11 did it.
Yeah.
You don't see their entire plan, so there are surprises and twists as it goes on, and then at the end, whenever they're trying to pull it off as well. For a movie about dumb rednecks, this really is pretty smart, actually, and it does a great job of telling the intricate stories, like I said. The only complaint I have is that it's a little too similar to an Ocean's movie and done by the same guy, which I did touch on. And it feels like a weird ripoff at times, but there's just enough originality in it and humor in it that if you can differentiate those things and not see it as a spoof of Ocean's 11 and see it for what it really is, it's a ton of fun, and I really do recommend it. It's up there for me as far as this year in movies goes because like I said, it's just funny and it's fun.
Yeah, I'm afraid, because I really want to see this movie, and we've talked about this before in the past, that movies like this don't stay in Evansville very long.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they stay in Akron a little bit longer. But I don't know. I'm waiting for my movie pass to get here. We posted a little bit on the Facebook about that. They moved it to $10 a month. Tyler and I had it for a long time. Well, Tyler longer than I did, when it was $30 a month, and then they bumped it up to $40, and I was like, nah, because that's not even a deal at that point. And then they just recently, I guess they must have lost a lot of people because they recently bumped it back down to 10. And so I'm waiting for my card, and I'm afraid that I'm going to miss out on this movie because at this point I've already paid my $10 for this month. I might as well wait for my card to get here before I see a movie. So I am hoping that I don't run out of time with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the Thursday 7:00 showing, and it was by no means sold out, but I mean, there was enough of a crowd in there. I think that it might be worth the Showplace's while to keep it around a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing going on this coming week either.
Yeah,
so
we're kind of getting into a very weird period for movies where things don't come out and things that aren't great come out. So I might be able to stick around a little bit because of the positive reviews it's getting.
Well, I'm hoping so, because I should be getting my new movie pass debit card in a few weeks. I mean, not a few weeks, a few more days. So I would say like Monday or Tuesday, I would probably get it, because I think I eventually signed up for it. What was it, Wednesday or Thursday when they first announced it?
I think Wednesday.
It was the next day before I could get on their shitty website, because apparently so many people tried to sign up for it that it crashed, and it wasn't until like Thursday morning before I was able to actually sign up for it. So hopefully I get my card soon so I could go see this. And I'll probably end up, because it's so cheap now, I'll probably end up seeing The Hitman's Bodyguard, even though that's getting bad reviews as well, because there's nothing coming out this week.
Yeah, it's a bummer that's the period of time we're in with movies, but happens every year, so
for sure.
All right, what are you into, man?
I'm going to talk about a couple of different video games that I've been playing recently. We talked about this with Sigmund Gaming at Indie PopCon. I don't get to play a ton for myself, and so I've been trying to make more time to do that. So I'm going to talk about one game that I've been playing for the YouTube channel in Splatoon 2, and I'm going to talk about one game that I've been playing kind of just for myself. I haven't recorded any videos for it. I don't plan on recording any videos, and that is Destiny. So Splatoon 2, which is, of course, a sequel to the really popular Wii U game. I never played the first game. I attempted, knowing that this game was coming out and knowing that I wanted to do some videos, a walkthrough for it, for the YouTube channel. I was like, well, I don't want to go in completely blind because I don't want to seem like a turd trying to do these videos. But unfortunately, GameFly sent me 2 different copies of this game, and both of them didn't work in my Wii U. And I know it was the copies of the game because my Wii U works fine. Like, I tried other games and they fired up and they worked just fine. So it wasn't my Wii U. So for whatever reason, GameFly really just didn't want me to play the first Splatoon. And I feel really conflicted with this game because the critic in me understands that it's a good game. Like, there's not anything bad about this game. Like, it's well put together. The design is really beautiful. It's an interesting concept. I like when games come out and make weird games like this, because basically you're half kid and you're half squid, and your gun is just spews out ink. It's really fucking weird, but it's fun. I understand that it's a good game, but on the other side of it, it's just not geared towards me. It's definitely geared towards a younger audience, which it seems like Nintendo usually goes for. Like, you don't see a ton of mature games on their platforms for some reason. Like, their more popular games always seem like, maybe that's just me being naive, but it just seems like a lot of their games are geared towards more kids. But anyways, the story mode, for the most part, is pretty bare. I am not a huge fan of it. There's not a whole lot to the stages. They seem like they're pretty much the same thing over and over again. And I'm just not having as much fun as I thought I would, because I heard such good things about the first game. And I think my expectations might have been too high for the second one. And like I said, I was going completely blind, so I didn't really know. I mean, I knew enough about it because being in the culture, I knew what it was going to be, but I hadn't played it, obviously. So I actually hate doing this, but I don't know how much longer that I'm going to play these games for the YouTube channel, just because with Madden coming out later this week when this episode airs, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stick with it, because I'm currently I'll be playing Madden, The Last Guardian. I do my Throwback Thursday videos, and Splatoon 2. So eventually I'm going to have to cut out one of those games. And I think it's probably end up being this game, because I'm not digging it as much as I thought I was going to be. And again, that might just be my high expectations, because the first one was reviewed so well. But yeah, I just don't like it as much as I thought I was going to.
I haven't played these games. I remember when the first one came out, it was really popular and people were really looking forward to it, but you told me more about the most I know about this game. I just learned from you. So
yeah. So the second game I want to talk about is Destiny, and I've always considered myself a huge gamer, but there were some few years there that were pretty bare. Really, basically when I got out of college, it was really just Madden and Halo, with a few exceptions here and there, but for the most part, even though I consider myself a huge gamer, it was really just Madden and Halo. And Destiny, unfortunately, kind of came out during that time period, so it fell through the cracks for me. And similar with Splatoon 2, with the second one coming out, I really wanted to play the first one, because I had heard some really good things about it. And after playing it for a little bit, I haven't quite got through the story mode just yet. I'm really bummed that I never played it. I am a huge Halo fan, like I said, and this game is made from Bungie, which is the original studio that made Halo. It's not currently, I think it's like 342 Studios or whatever Microsoft is calling their studio now, but it's basically, Destiny is basically a Halo game without Master Chief. Like, it feels like it's just another Halo game for me, which I'm saying that as a good thing, because I am a fan of those games. There's a ton to this game. I feel like I just barely scratched the surface playing it. I think I've put like 10 hours into it, so it's not like I played a ton of this game, but much like Splatoon 2, it's really beautiful, just in a different way. Like, Splatoon 2 is much more cartoony and geared towards a younger audience, and this is more realistic. Well, I mean, it's futuristic, but more realism as far as the design is concerned. There's a ton of customization with this game, which is great, because you kind of get to play it the way that you want to play it. If you just want to have a shotgun and just blow everybody away, or have these huge hand cannons, you can play it that way. But there's also these sniper rifles, so you could play it, if you wanted to be a little bitch, you could play it like that. So I love that there's a bunch of different customization options that definitely hits that collecting aspect that a lot of gamers like me have. I will say that the story could be a lot better with this game. I feel like, much like Splatoon 2, it feels like much of the same every stage that you get to, and the story is all not all that in depth. I feel like it was just, let's let's just put this person in a situation where they have to fight a bunch of these guys and rinse and repeat. Like, the story is not that involved. I've heard that it gets a little bit better with the expansion packs, but I haven't even beat the first part of it yet. So I haven't even made my way through the expansion packs yet. So, it's just, I was a little disappointed with the story because the Halo games do have a really cool mythology to them, and I was kind of expecting more of the same with this game, and so unfortunately I was a little bit disappointed with that so far, and I really don't want to play with other people when it comes to story mode, and I know that just reading, I haven't gotten to this part yet, but just reading about the game, it seems like the further you get, the more you're kind of dependent on strangers just playing the game with you. And that's a bummer because when I play the story mode, I don't want to play with other people. I just want to play by myself. Now, if we were to play like co-op mode, that's different, but not being able to play the game without strangers pisses me off. Like, I don't like that at all. So I'm definitely looking forward to the second one coming out in a couple of weeks. I hope the story's a little bit more fleshed out in the second one. I know that that's something, at least what I've heard from the development of the second one, is something that they definitely worked on. They heard the complaints, because I'm definitely not the only one that's complained about it. So hopefully the story is a lot more fleshed out in the second one.
Yeah, I played Destiny a bit, and I was never too into it. Like, I played it here and there, and if I had a buddy that wanted to play it, I'd jump on and play it, but it wasn't a game I stuck with. It just didn't capture my attention, and I'd rather play something like Halo. So, yeah, I didn't stick with it. I'm gonna probably pick up Destiny 2, but hopefully they change some of the mechanics and stuff.
Yeah, for me, it felt very similar because it feels like a Halo game. Like I said, like the controls and some of the weapons and stuff like that. It felt very similar. And of course, I think they call it the Fallen in this game, but I mean, it's the Covenant in the other game. So, I mean, the creatures felt pretty similar as well, but I say that in a good way because I love those games. So I don't know. And it also feels weird me playing it so long after it came out because it's already had 2 expansion packs, and I'm just now playing the first part of the story. So it definitely feels weird because the few people that are still on that game are ridiculously good at that game and have stuck with it, obviously, through all of these years. And maybe they're just jumping back on because the new one's coming out soon. I don't know, but it feels weird because every once in a while I'll be playing a part of the story and then somebody will jump in with me, and I'm just like, I'm level, I think like 15 at this point, and they're level 40, and I'm just like, why are you even playing with me? It just seems very weird, and I'm not looking forward to the part where I have to have somebody else to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, so
oh yeah,
buckle up.
I probably won't beat the story because I'll just get frustrated with that part.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'd imagine even with Destiny 2, that's going to be part of it. Like, I feel like that's the whole point. I
know that more games are going to that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to rely on that. I want it to be an option if I wanted to do it, but I don't want it to be something that's mandatory.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, what's the point of buying a game if you can't play it by yourself?
Yeah. I understand that they want to foster that, but I also don't want it to be dependent on that either.
There are more terrible people out there than good people in this world, and especially on online,
Xbox Live,
on online gaming where you're kind of anonymous. So
for sure. All right, so our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I can never come up with good segment titles, so we just tell it what it is.
Wouldn't it be weird to change it like 150 something episodes in?
Yeah, but I mean, we really just didn't care about the segment.
No, I think we were too in our heads about what we were going to actually talk about when we started this podcast. We was like, just call it comics. Yeah. Just call it what we're into. It's no big deal.
Wish we could change Nerd Favorite, to be honest with you, though, because that sucks.
Yeah, maybe we'll bounce that around.
Yeah, because that's just garbage. But anyways, so what'd you read this week?
So this week, there was pretty much one big comic that came out, and it's probably pretty obvious that one of us would talk about it because of our history on the podcast of talking about the creative team behind it, and that is Dark Knight's Metal #1, which we've kind of we've talked about in Nerd News. I talked about, I think, one of the 2 prelude comics to this that came out in July, but of course this is written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Greg Capullo, who Pat and I have fondled and touched metaphorically many times on this podcast. So,
oh no, I've touched myself many times to his comics.
So, before I get going, did you read it?
Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to read it yet.
Okay.
Defenders has been my mission the last couple of days.
Okay, so I will not obviously spoil anything. We hardly ever spoil too much in comics, but I am going to have to touch on some story points. So, this comic is crazy. And I don't necessarily mean that in a good way.
Okay.
So I usually try to do a recap of a comic whenever we do this segment, just kind of high points for the story. But there are so many convoluted storylines and ideas to follow in this book that I'm finding it really hard to summarize it. So at its core, in the prologue comics, The Forge and the casting, which I believe I talked about The Forge, Batman is investigating a dark energy that is kind of signaling everywhere all over the universe, and that must mean something bad is about to happen, is what like the conclusion that he comes to. So it sets up the revelation in this book about the nth metal, which is an alien energy that once powered Hawkman and Hawkgirl's wings once upon a time. In fact, this comic brings back the former Hawk Girl, her name is Kendra Saunders, to explain basically all the weird stuff that's happening to the Justice League and all the weird stuff that's going on with this nth metal. And as much as I talk about, I love DC, I don't know much about Hawkman, I don't know much about Hawk Girl, but the more research I did, the more I've discovered that their history is pretty convoluted, and there's not... like, they have different backstories depending on the timeline, and it's kind of hard to follow, so...
You get a little bit of that in the Flash TV show,
really?
But not a ton, because I believe she's in the Legends of Tomorrow as well.
Is. Yeah, so maybe watching those TV shows, maybe I should do that, so it would maybe help me understand a little bit more, because right now I'm really confused with those characters, and I'm having a hard time caring about the nth metal. Like, what does it mean? So... unfortunately, that's definitely where this book lost me. Maybe, like I said, it's too deep cuts for me, or maybe it really is too convoluted, but I had a hard time following or carrying what was going on. The comic seems to be turning a lot on its head. Like, it seems to be a big deal in the DC universe, which is what an event comic should do.
For sure.
But it all just feels strange, and it doesn't have my buy-in. Like, I don't care what's happening. And granted, it's only been one issue, but the same could be said for the two Prelude issues, too. I just don't... it's hard for me to comprehend what's going on, so it's hard for me to care. So that being said, I'm still 100% bought into this book because I trust the creative team behind it, and I look forward to more issues, but I hope things are a little bit more streamlined going forward and that the puzzle pieces come together a little bit more fluidly. I will say the opening to this book is really fun before you kind of get into the convoluted nth metal stuff. It just kind of follows the Justice League on one of their adventures, and it shows them fighting in an alien coliseum, and they're trapped and trying to figure a way to get out. And basically, to end that fight, there's like this Justice League Zord that comes together. It's really
as it does, yeah.
It's really weird, but it's kind of cool and fun. So I really like the opening, but it's losing me a little bit. So I hope that I don't know, it comes together for me a little bit more in future issues.
Yeah, that's disappointing, because if you, being the big DC fan that you aren't digging it that much, then I feel like I'm definitely not going to.
Well, we've talked about it a lot when we do this segment. Like, exposition can be detrimental to a comic, and I mentioned the Hawk Girl, Kendra, whatever her name was, coming in. She's not Hawk Girl anymore, but it's basically just pages of her explaining to the Justice League and explaining to Batman what the nth metal is and what's going on.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, and it lost me. So hopefully we get that out of the way, and now we can go on the adventure. So anyways, what did you read, man?
I read Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows number 10.
Cool.
I think we both have discussed this book on the past. I love the nostalgia factor in this book. It definitely plays on that. I read the main Amazing Spider-Man book, and I really like it, but it's a different kind of book. That obviously the character has evolved, as you would expect, over the course of his entire career. And so it's just kind of nice to have this book that kind of checks in with the Peter Parker that I knew as a kid. Now, you kind of get that a little bit with that Spidey comic that they did for a while there. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but that just seemed like retread. It was basically just they were trying to retell the stories that we already knew. With this book, it's not quite that. it's telling different stories, but it's kind of going back to what if this thing didn't happen that happened in the main book. So I really appreciate that they're trying to tell different stories. But it feels like I can check in with the Peter Parker that I knew as a kid. That being said, the Venom story arc that just ended with number 9 felt really, really played out. I can't blame them for trying, because that's what this book is about, is trying to kind of cash in on that nostalgic factor. And Peter Parker or Venom have always clashed, obviously, and he's such a popular villain that you kind of have to do him in one of these books. I just felt like we've seen this story play out a million times before. Yeah, we've probably never seen it, at least I've never seen it play out with Mary Jane before, but it just didn't feel like it was a book that I really cared that much about, or at least a story arc that I didn't really care that much about. They've been recently kind of, every once in a while, they will tease Green Goblin coming back. And finally, in issue number 10, the current issue that just came out this past Wednesday, they finally start that storyline for real. And I'm really hoping that it doesn't happen the same way that Venom happened this past story arc, because obviously we've seen the Green Goblin and the Hobgoblin and all that stuff play out in just so many other story arcs in Spider-Man. He's basically Spider-Man's Joker in a way. So they're never going to truly get rid of him, and I hope that it doesn't play out the same way that the Venom story arc played out. I think they did a really, really good job of establishing him in the past issues. They didn't really make him a focal point until issue 10, and I think they really are in a really good place with the character, and they started off really solid with a solid issue in number 10. I really enjoyed how they brought his character into the fold, and I think that they're going to do a really good job with the story arc. But like I said, I'm afraid the way that the Venom story arc played out, I'm afraid that it's going to be much of the same, which I'm hoping isn't the case, because I'm really liking this book.
Yeah, this was a book I was really enjoying, but I got fairly far behind on it. I haven't even gotten to the Venom stuff yet. I think I'm 5 issues behind. I think I've read through issue 5. So I picked up issue 10 and I saw the cover was like, it's a weird cover. It's like Norman Osborn as a kid, and he's playing with like...
No, it's his grandkid.
Oh, that's his grandkid playing with the action figures?
It's Harry's son.
Okay.
He's the only one that's left alive at this point.
Gotcha. All right, that's interesting. I mean, I'm not gonna quit on this book. It's just I got behind on my comics through the summer, but it's something I look forward to catching back up on.
For sure. Like, don't get me wrong, the Venom stuff is still cool because he's such a cool character. It just feels like we've seen this before.
Yeah.
And it's just like we're seeing the same thing with Mary Jane that we saw with Peter Parker way back when he first got the suit. Yeah. And just like, okay, well, and then there's this weird fight between Mary Jane and Venom, and then Peter Parker's just watching it, but it's very, very weird because you're only seeing one. It's so hard to explain because it's so weird, and I was just like, what is happening right now? So it's definitely a disappointment, because Venom is such a popular character and such a big character in Peter Parker's mythology that I was disappointed the way that they used the character.
Yeah, I'll have to catch back up.
For sure.
All right, ready for nerd news?
Yep.
All right, so a few headlines this week. Nothing too crazy, but we'll get started. The first one I think I honestly only threw in because I watched the original this week, so it's kind of a weird timing. But Chris Columbus, who wrote the original Gremlins, has finished writing Gremlins 3.
Oh, yeah?
And like I said, I watched the first Gremlins for the first time in a while.
He did the first couple of Harry Potter movies, too, by the way.
Yeah, he did. So I wonder why he's kind of going back to this. You think he'd be past Gremlins, but he is not. So he did write it. He said that they would still use puppets, but there might be some CGI in it, and that it's not a reboot. It's a sequel, yada, yada, yada. I doubt that this movie will ever get made, because I don't know that anybody's really clamoring for a Gremlins 3, but it's out there if they want to make it.
I've seen these movies a million times, but it's not like a franchise that I'm really all that into. It just is one of those things where, as a kid, if it was on, okay, yeah, whatever, I'll watch it, but I never really paid too much attention to it, which is a fun little thing that I didn't really like the second one, and obviously that's a pretty popular opinion. Nobody really liked the second one. Just, it got too weird.
Have you seen the Key and Peele sketch?
I have.
That fucking sketch is amazing.
Yeah, because it's dead on. Like, why did they do those things that they did?
Oh, no. If you haven't seen the Key and Peele sketch, there's a Key and Peele sketch about the writer room of Gremlins 2, and it's hilarious. Look it up if you haven't seen it before, but it's great. But this is apparently, he says that Gizmo may not make it out because he's caused too many people to die. So at some point, you got to kill Gizmo, which I don't know how that'd go over because Gizmo's pretty beloved. He's a cute little animal. So,
but I mean, the first movie especially is kind of dark. I mean, for a, I wouldn't want to say a kids movie, but I mean, it's geared somewhat towards kids.
Yeah, I saw Gremlins 2 when I was little, and I don't remember much of it, but
I feel like
I wonder how you come back from that.
Yeah, Gremlins 2 is pretty cartoony, as the Key and Peele sketch would lead you to believe.
So how do you come back from that, I wonder?
I don't know.
Build off of it. Oh, who knows? We'll see maybe one day. So Ozark has been renewed for a season 2.
Cool.
Which
neither one of us has seen it.
I've watched the first three episodes, and it's pretty fucking fantastic. But then The Defenders came along, and of course I had to watch that for us to review this week. But the 3 episodes I've seen of Ozark are great. So I'm
surprised you even started it knowing that you were going to have to watch it.
Yeah, I had a weird week.
Okay.
And where I was kind of working and kind of sitting around waiting for phone calls about selling my house. So I needed something to occupy my mind because I was going crazy. Yeah. So I just kind of started Ozark because it was there. Yeah. And I really like it. But again, I had to take a break from it. So I'm curious how they're making a season 2 because that makes me curious about how season 1 is going to end because it's definitely headed for a certain course. But I'll circle back to Ozark maybe once I finish it.
For sure. I was afraid with Netflix canceling a lot of shows after the first season now. That's kind of what they're trying to do. Not that they're doing it on purpose, but it's like they have so much stuff out there that if it doesn't work that first season, you definitely get cut pretty easily. So I was afraid that it was going to be one of those shows.
I was scared about Glow, and we talked about Glow earlier this summer, and I definitely liked it more than you did. But it got renewed last week for a season 2, and I didn't put it in Nerd News because I know you weren't a huge fan. But speaking of, I'm glad that show got another season as well.
Cool. I probably will never watch it because I never gravitated to it.
Yeah, Mark Maron on that show is fucking hilarious. He's really funny. Let's see. Daniel Craig was on Stephen Colbert this week and announced that he is going to do Bond 25. So
he finally made up his mind.
Yeah, it's funny because Stephen Colbert had like the quote in front of him about him saying he would rather slash his wrists, and of course he had to, he's like, of course you would bring that up, and he had to backtrack of like you would and say, whenever I was asked that question, I had finished up Spectre 2 days before, and I just couldn't even imagine doing that again. And now that there's been some time, and
I couldn't even.
But really, some money. He's going to do one more, but he said that will probably be it.
Yeah, I don't blame him because I can't even expect to watch Spectre again because that movie's fucking awful.
It's a shame because, I mean, so I've not seen like any Bond movie except for bits and pieces of the others, but I've only seen Daniel Craig's Bond. And I like him for I love Casino Royale, and I really, really, really like Skyfall, but he's 2 for 4 right now.
Yeah, it just seems like they make a good one, and then they make a bad one. Good one, and then a bad one.
So maybe he's thinking he'll go out on with a good one.
Yeah, for sure. I actually like Skyfall more than Casino Royale, even though I like both of them.
Yeah. I wonder, I thought I had heard if he did another one, he'd be the person who's played Bond the most. Do you know if that's right?
I have no idea.
So this would be 5. It seems to me like somebody else would have done more than 5, but I don't know the history enough.
Yeah, it seems about right. I mean, doing 5 movies for the same character, I mean, that is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and that gives the studio a couple more years to kind of figure out where they want to go with it after him and who they want to cast. And if, there's been the idea of maybe doing a female James Bond, Jane Bond, I guess. But we'll see.
Don't call her Jane Bond.
If they make a female James Bond.
No, that's what I'm not saying you as I'm not, don't call her Jane Bond. That's stupid.
What would you call her?
I don't know. Just not that.
Samantha Bond.
No, that's dumb too. Officially, Tyler can't pick the name. Not that they would ask. Why would they ask us?
Let's see. And then the last one is, this wasn't confirmed by Disney, but apparently multiple outlets confirmed that there is, in fact, an Obi-Wan standalone Star Wars film in development, which I would assume will be in the next one after Han. So it'd be Episode 8, Han, Episode 9, and then Obi-Wan, I'd assume.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's apparently happening. No word on Ewan McGregor or not, but you'd assume it'd have to be, right? So,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would... They can't do that movie without him.
yeah.
But
And, I mean, he's expressed that he would do it, so...
as long as it's not a trilogy, as they previously had talked about, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know that you can make a trilogy about his time in the desert because he was supposed to be a hermit all those times, so you can't send him on too many adventures. And then didn't the Star Wars comic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know how you do that because they've already, according to them, these are canon, so you've already kind of established what he's doing. I mean, you could still, there's plenty of time that he's there.
Years, right?
Yeah, so it's not like you've covered all that. I mean, you kind of established what he's doing, but there's still plenty of stories that you could tell.
Yeah, so that's happening. Maybe.
All right, cool, man.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, so as we've talked about before, earlier in the show, we are going to review Defenders Season 1, which obviously is the culmination of the Marvel Netflix solo superhero series so far. You have obviously Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and unfortunately Iron Fist. I'm going to shit on Iron Fist so much. It was created by Douglas Petrie and Marco Ramirez, which I guess they both started as kind of the co-showrunners, and then Douglas Petrie left shortly after filming had started. So I guess they're crediting Marco Ramirez as the showrunner of the Defenders. Basically, it follows the events of Iron Fist as the team reluctantly comes together to fight a common enemy, the Hand. And we were recently on an episode of the Evansville podcast, which I don't think will come out for a couple of more weeks, but definitely check that out because it was a lot of fun. And we brought this show up, and the host asked us when we first starting our Defenders review to mention if we thought that he needed to watch the rest of Iron Fist Season 1, and I'm sorry to say that I feel like you should watch the rest of Iron Fist Season 1 because his storyline, unfortunately, plays a huge part in this, which is obviously disappointing because I was hoping that they would just forget that even existed.
Obviously, they had higher hopes for Iron Fist and kind of put things into motion with that leading into this show, even though they kind of got poor reviews with Iron Fist. So, yeah, you have to watch it, and it's a chore. So,
yeah, and it kind of bumps me out because I obviously loved the first season of Daredevil. Really, really, really liked, I wouldn't say love, but I really liked the second season as well. Jessica Jones, I think we were both kind of lukewarm on, but it was still solid TV. Luke Cage was really, really good. And then, of course, right before you have the Defenders, you have the shit show that was Iron Fist Season 1. And I should have been super excited for the Defenders, but because that was the last thing that we saw, it was like it's put such a sour taste in my mouth that I was just like, oh yeah, this is coming out. And I should have been much more excited for this than I really was.
Yeah, I should have been too. You know, how many years has it been since they announced
4? I think 4 or 5.
We're doing all these characters get their own season of television, and then they're going to team up in the Defenders. And it was like, holy shit, that's amazing. And by the it's all culminated. It's finally here. And I remember when Daredevil came out. I set my alarm for 2 a.m. because that's what time it premieres in Central Standard Time. And I watched the first episode because I was so excited for it. This show, it was like, all right, well, I gotta watch Defenders this weekend for the podcast.
Yeah.
I would have watched it either way, but there was no excitement. So
I wouldn't say that there was no excitement for me. I was looking forward to it, but like I said, I feel weird because I should have been much more excited for it. Obviously, the movies are a bigger deal, but I mean, when the Avengers came out, that was my whole world for a little bit there, and I just wanted to feel the same way about this, and it wasn't even close to that because Iron Fist. And I think if Iron Fist was better, it would have been because I really liked the other shows. Jessica Jones, again, kind of lukewarm on, but Luke Cage I really liked, and the first 2 seasons of Daredevil were awesome. So I think if the Iron Fist was even mediocre, I would have been really excited for this show. But as you guys will find out, well, I mean, you've already found out because we've reviewed the first season, but I'm going to shit on that show even more while we talk about the Defenders. So broad strokes, so what'd you feel about this show?
So the one thing that you can say about these shows is that they definitely don't blow their load. They stretch everything out to the point where it's almost incredible. Well, not almost, it is boring at times. So I was very excited when I saw that it was only 8 episodes, and I told you, I was like, oh, it's only 8 episodes. We can watch that super quick and still, not have to record really late in the weekend. But that being said, 8 episodes still felt like 13 to me. And while there were some enjoyable parts of the show, overall, I would say that just because of how bloated it is and, 1/4 of the heroes really sucking, I'm pretty disappointed with the result.
Yeah, that was kind of my first note, is that I was really surprised that it was 8 episodes. I would have loved if Iron Fist was only 8 episodes or 6 or 4, because that was really bad. But this should have been longer, so I think we're going to disagree a little bit on this show. I think it should have been longer, especially if you're going to take a few episodes to get the characters together. I was a little bit disappointed with that aspect, and I think we'll agree there. Why it takes you 3 episodes to get them together, I don't know. I mean, some of them had kind of talked to each other a little bit after the first episode, but
or been in each other.
Yeah. So it was a little bit disappointing there that it took you. If you're only going to make this season 8 episodes, you need to get them together right away. So they're together most of the season. I felt like they weren't. I mean, it took them 3 episodes for all of them to get together. And from then on, it's really fun. But those first few episodes feel like you're just watching separate stories. They're just recap episodes.
Yeah.
And that was disappointing, which Jessica Jones, it has been a while since we've seen her, but that's something that they should have thought of before they put all this stuff together. They shouldn't have had those a few episodes to get you caught up with everything, because it felt like, oh yeah, Jessica Jones is also part of this, so let's get. And then, especially with the Trish stuff, like I was like, oh yeah, she's a character from Jessica Jones, because it's been so long since I've watched that show. And honestly, I felt like I should have rewatched it, but I was trying to finish up The Wire before this started, which I did finish up, and I liked that show quite a lot.
Oh,
but
good.
anyways, I will say that even though I didn't really like the first couple of episodes because it felt choppy, I did really like the color scheme stuff. I like that they kind of used that as a way to, we're going to talk about Jessica Jones now, or we're going to catch you up on what's going on with Daredevil right now. So I thought that was a cool way of doing it, even though I wasn't crazy about the way that they formatted those first couple of episodes. But like I said, once you get where it's going, I think the wait is worth it. And so I think that's where we're going to differ, is I don't think that you thought that the payoff was that great. I really enjoyed, once they were together, I really enjoyed that stuff. I think their personalities work well together. I really loved that they kind of called Danny out on his stupid bullshit. And so I really liked that quite a lot, because I hated that. So I liked that it felt like they hated it as much as I hated it. And I really appreciated that, because I felt like it was almost like they were calling themselves out on the first season of Iron Fist, because that was really bad.
Yeah, I think we might disagree a little bit on the latter half of this season.
All right, so jumping right into the story, I feel like I've already kind of beat this dead horse, but I hate the fact that Iron Fist is so important in this series. Like I said, in broad strokes, I was kind of hoping that they would just forget that season even happened.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing, that his first season carried so much weight. Like, it was the thing that kept this thing together. Like, it was very, very disappointing, because that stuff got really convoluted in the first season of his series, and then it just kind of carried over into this, and it really bummed me out quite a lot. I was excited when I had heard that Sigourney Weaver was cast in this, the big bad of this season. And because I love her, I mean, she's in some of my favorite movies. So obviously I love her as an actress, but I wasn't crazy in the way they used her.
No.
They tried to go for that Kingpin feel in the first season of Daredevil, and it just didn't work at all. And it was kind of a slow burn with her, and when you get to where she's going, she felt like a very generic villain.
Yes.
And I just didn't really think that they used her very well, and I get that they felt like they needed a big name for the villain, but one of the reasons that the Avengers, the first film, worked so well is because you used a villain that we had already seen before.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I get why they don't feel like they needed to use Madame Gao, but I think she would have been much more effective if they had made her the person. Like, they could have easily done the same thing that they did with Sigourney Weaver's character and just made it Madame Gao. And I think that would have been much more effective because we've already seen her so many times. I mean, you can't bring Kingpin back into it as much as I would have liked to have seen him been in this season. So, I mean, just use a character we've already seen before, and I think it would have been much more effective, especially if you're only going to have 8 episodes, because they wasted so much time getting her to where she needed to be when you already had a character that you could have easily just thrown in there and been the same. And you would have had the same exact season.
Yeah, no, I agree. She was completely underused, and her character arc was very disappointing, especially given the star power that she carries with her and she brought to the show. So for me, the story-wise, so I read this article today, and it was an interview. I read it after I finished the season. It was an interview with the showrunner.
Okay.
And one of the questions he asked, I forget what he was asked. I forget what the question was about, but it was something with Iron Fist's storyline, and something that kind of seemed mismatched with Iron Fist in this. And he said that you would have to talk to Iron Fist's showrunner. So that was a red flag for me, because, you know, if he's not able to answer that question and he tells you to go talk to Iron Fist's showrunner, it tells me that, you know, the showrunners of these seasons aren't talking together or talking to each other as much as they maybe should be. And he's talked about how whenever they started with Daredevil season 1 and then they moved to Daredevil season 2 and these other shows, so on and so forth, they didn't really know what they were working towards for the Defenders. They kind of knew that it was going to be something with the hand, but they didn't know what the big thing was going to be that we saw in the last 2 episodes of the season, which of course we won't spoil. So I don't know, maybe if it's because there's a quicker turnaround on TV than with the movies, or maybe it's because, like I said, there are different showrunners that aren't communicating as well as they should be. But it's obvious to me, at least, that things didn't mesh well between the seasons leading up to this show. And they should have kind of planned out some aspects of the story leading up to the Defenders better than they should have. To me, the story feels completely artificial and it feels forced. I don't see any reason why Jessica Jones or Luke Cage would fit into the Hand storyline. And that worked well for their seasons because their characters, you know, it would, if you watch the introduction of Jessica Jones and she's fighting the Hand, it doesn't really make sense. Same with Luke Cage. But
yeah, it was kind of flimsy. I like Luke Cage's in this story a lot more than Jessica Jones. That just felt forced.
Jessica Jones just falls into it. And I will say, like, Luke Cage has a little bit more motivation, but it still, to me, felt forced. And that just made it seem artificial, and that's kind of, I think, why I wasn't bought into the 8 episodes. It was hard for me to care, and maybe, I don't know, the Hand was just like this big ominous thing when it was introduced in Daredevil season 1, and then, you know, they explored it a little bit in Daredevil season 2, and it was still like this scary thing, but it didn't seem that bad.
Because that's Iron Fist. I mean, that season was so bad, and that was when we finally got to see them, and that show was such a hot mess that it just kind of took the luster away from the Hand.
And I think, I mean, you alluded to it as well, but the Defenders would have had to have gone into production before Iron Fist debuted earlier this year.
Yeah.
So they weren't expecting it to be as poorly received as it was. So,
but how do you watch that and not know that that's going to happen?
Well, maybe they created Iron Fist and they're like, well, this is going to lead directly into the Defenders, and it was too late to turn back with story notes and so on and so forth. So who knows? But it was definitely to the detriment of this show. I was very disappointed, obviously.
Yeah, I was surprised. We usually kind of agree with stuff like this. It seems like we're going to disagree a little bit. I do like the point that you made with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. I do somewhat agree, even though I see where Luke Cage falls into this story a little bit more. Jessica Jones, I mean, there's no way. that that character, knowing what we know about that character, would care at all, like would be involved in. And I think that they tried to have that come across. Like she was most reluctant out of the four of them to get involved. I feel like she would have walked out at the very beginning, and she wouldn't have cared, and she would have kind of done her own thing. Even if she cared about this case as much as she seemed to, I think she would have just done it alone. It was hard for me to buy that for sure. I don't know if we want to get to this yet, and of course we're not going to spoil anything, but the last episode really bugged me. That last, I don't want to say twist or the big plot point towards the end, it was so obvious that it wasn't going to go the way they wanted you to go.
Yep.
And obviously I'm trying to be as vague as physically possible. And so the last shot that you see was just completely obvious.
And yeah, so let me just put it this way. So it's hard to fear for the characters. Like, you know, when they're obviously they're defenders, so they're teamed up and they're going after something in the last episode. Like that's kind of expected. Whenever they've announced Luke Cage Season 2, Iron Fist Season 2, Jessica Jones Season 2, and Daredevil Season 3, it's hard to fear for anyone's safety.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, and I get that you have to announce those shows, but it kind of takes away from it, right? It's like, oh, well, nothing terrible is going to happen because we're going to see their solo adventures in the next year and a half. So,
yeah, I'm very curious how they're going to do that, because this is something that I brought up when Avengers came out. Like, how do you do solo superhero stuff after you have the Avengers? Why wouldn't Iron Fist go help this other person?
I don't know. They've introduced so many good side characters through some of these shows. You know, Karen Page and Foggy and Misty Knight and Clara Temple and Trish, who you brought up. Like, there's so many people that these characters care about.
Yes.
You could have used one of their, I don't want to spoil that somebody doesn't die or does die, but there's motivation there that you could have, you know, kill off one of the side characters. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, Malcolm.
Yeah, Malcolm, another one. Yeah, so kill one of them to motivate the characters, but they go a different route that I don't necessarily agree with.
For sure. So let's move right along to performances before we spoil anything with the story.
Yeah, we're getting close.
So, like I said, I was pretty excited for Sigourney Weaver to be cast. She just doesn't do anything for me in this show. I don't know if it's the material or what, and I know we talked a lot about that with our reviews and the performances. It's hard to tell if it's the acting or the material, because I love her so much that I would definitely go with her underutilization in this show, and just the fact that her character is not really all that well developed. I love Madame Gao. I dig what she's putting into this character, and I just really like that character quite a lot. So I think that, again, I think she would have done a better job as the big bad in this season. I don't know the woman's name off the top of my head, but she does a really great job. I am always going to love Charlie Cox as Daredevil. I think he's amazing. He was amazing in Boardwalk Empire, and he was so fucking cool at Indiana Comic-Con, so I'm always going to love him. So I thought he did an excellent job. I am going more towards your side as far as Finn Jones. I talked about that. I think the one good thing I said about season 1 of Iron Fist was I thought he was actually one of the better parts of that, and he was really bad in Defender season 1.
Yeah, he's very, I don't know, he's like a cardboard cutout of an actor. There's not much to him.
Yeah, he's the shell of a character.
There, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. He's really bad in this season. I was like, man, I don't need to rewatch Iron Fist season 1 because I'm never gonna put myself through that. But I just started doubting what I saw in the first season, because I was like, maybe, I don't know. He seemed like he was really good, and not really good, but I mean, I thought he was the best part of that season, and I don't know, maybe it was just because he was teamed up with all these other really good actors, and it just kind of shined through that he was just not up to their standard, even though I'm not a fan of Jessica Jones as a character. I don't think that she does a very good job with the character, but he was really bad.
Yeah, so for me, performance-wise, you know, I feel the same way with Sigourney Weaver. She didn't do much, and I don't know if I mean, she's such a great actress and she has such a great history. I don't want to say, oh, she phoned it in, because I'm more willing to blame it on the story, like you kind of said. So maybe she didn't have much to do with, but she was extremely disappointing. I never really thought of her as a real threat. As the big bad of the season. Finn Jones is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
I think so. The one thing I'll disagree with you maybe is I think he was better in Defenders than he was in Iron Fist. But, still a turd in both. Charlie Cox is amazing. I think Mike Coulter is decent as Luke Cage. Let's see. Somebody that I was really pleased to see, and she's in the trailer, so it's not too big of a spoiler, but Elodie Young came back as Elektra. And she's fantastic. I think that she does a really good Elektra. I think she's a better actress than the work. I mean, she hasn't done a lot, but I think that she's been great as Elektra so far. I think Rosario Dawson is far and away the best actor on this show. She's above this show, to be honest.
I wouldn't say she's above the show because I like the show quite a lot.
Well, anytime she's on the screen, I'm like, oh my god, she's acting
plays
circles.
Colleen?
She's
because she is not good either, and it was disappointing because they were both
Jessica Henwick.
Yeah, they were both together a lot, and it was just like, come on, like you're seriously overmatched at this point.
Rosario's like rolling her eyes.
Yeah,
oh my god, I signed this contract 4 years ago, and I didn't know I was going to be acting with these turds. The one other person I want to point out is Scott Glenn, who plays Stick. He's a very well-versed actor, and he's been in a lot. Like, I went to his IMDb, and he's not done a ton of major parts, but he's in a lot of great stuff. And I think that he kind of sucks.
He's very one note in this.
Yes.
I thought he was really good in season 1 of Daredevil, but he's the same thing. He's that one note the entire time, and it works well in that first season because he's not in it all that much in the first season. And so once you see more and more of the character, it's just,
And then the last person that I have not really talked about yet that plays a huge part on the show is obviously Kristen Ritter, who plays Jessica Jones. And I don't think she's very good.
No, I don't think she's good at all.
She doesn't play. Like, I get that she's kind of typecast as the I don't care girl, and that's what Jessica Jones is, but I don't think she does it very well. I think that she comes off as annoying. And
she's pouty.
Yeah, she's very pouty, and
she's got a resting bitch face, as the kids say.
I don't like where we leave her character at the end of the season, and I hate that season 2 of Jessica Jones, like, it was announced that David Tennant's coming back as the Purple Man, but it's probably going to be like in flashbacks, or he's haunting her or whatever, and I hate that because I want to see her. I hate to compare it to Wonder Woman, but I want to see her be a strong female character, not this character that's just completely tortured by her past. I want to see her be heroic and, she can still be a badass and she can still not care, but she doesn't need to be pouty about it. Yeah. So I would like to see her get past that, and hopefully maybe they'll get that way in season 2 of Jessica Jones at some point. But for now, she's just annoying.
For sure. So moving on to action. They love their hallway scenes, their fight scenes, which is fine. I mean, they've been doing it long enough now that I feel like that's
their thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say cliche, but I mean, if it works and it's something that you do well, you might as well keep doing it. And I really thought that it worked well because they all 3 of them have different fighting styles, and it was kind of cool, especially that first scene that you see them all fighting together and they don't really know that they're fighting together in a way. And so that was kind of cool. I appreciated that. I will say that the garage scene later in the season was a little underwhelming for me. It was cool, but I expected this showdown it felt rushed. Like we only got to see a little bit of it, and it's a big showdown. You would have thought that it would have lasted longer. The Daredevil Elektra stuff is still pretty cool. Like, it doesn't get old for me, so I really like when they go at it later in the season as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the martial arts aspect of the show. I think that they got better with the Defenders as opposed to Iron Fist. I thought that the
far and away better.
The fighting got a lot better. I mentioned that I felt like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were shoehorned into the story, and I feel like their fighting styles were shoehorned in as well. I don't feel like it meshed with what was going on around them.
I appreciate it. Like, I liked the different styles, and I liked the fact that you had in Luke Cage and in Jessica Jones, it felt like those DC movies that I complain about, like you're just smashing each other through the walls.
Yeah.
And because now they're in the Defenders, yeah, you still have that, but it's not all you're seeing. You're not just seeing them smash each other into the walls, and then that's all you got. You also have Daredevil, and you also have Iron Fist.
Yeah.
Being a lot more, I guess, finesse wouldn't necessarily be the best word for it, but much more technical.
Yeah.
And then they're still smashing the guys. And so that's fun. Like, I think that works well as a group. Separately, I don't think it works as well, even though I did like Luke Cage quite a lot. I think that it meshes well with the whole, like, I think they bounce off each other pretty well.
So the only other complaint I have about the action is there were some episodes where they use fast cuts way too much, and it's hard to kind of tell what's going on. So the action was better than Iron Fist, but not as good as Daredevil, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Iron Fist is so... oh, man. There's nothing good about that. I hate that I keep beating that dead horse. But
if we could revisit that show, I don't know what my rating was for it, but I'd probably give it lower.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to eventually rewatch all of this.
Oh, why?
I don't know. But I mean, but the other shows are good. I mean, we were lukewarm on Jessica Jones, but
I feel like I wish we were lukewarm on Luke Cage, because that would just be perfect. Unintended.
Yeah.
But.
Okay. That was dumb. Anyways, the last segment that we always do with TV seasons is we always pick out a couple of notable episodes with it. 8 episode season. It's tough to pick out a couple because
I just picked out one.
So the first couple are just kind of throwaway episodes because it's just getting the team together. The big one for me is, I think it's the 4th episode. I think it's called The Royal Dragon or something like that, where they're in the Chinese food restaurant.
Oh yeah.
That was it was the most fun of the season because they're all kind of bouncing off of each other and they're calling Danny out a lot about his bullshit and they're kind of joking around with each other. We have talked a lot. I mean, we love the seriousness of Daredevil. I mean, he's definitely a character that's dark and brooding, and it works. It somewhat works, I guess, with Jessica Jones as well, but we have been calling for it to be a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And we finally kind of get that in Defenders, and I really, really appreciate that, especially in this episode. So I really like that episode a lot. Sure, you can pick the later episodes where it's much more action-packed, but I really, really liked that episode. I mean, it's kind of more calm and laid back, but I love that they're just kind of bouncing off of each other. I really like their different personalities in this show.
Yeah, I'm just on that note. It was kind of cool to see Luke Cage kind of play a more fun role. Yeah, like, his season gets pretty heavy. There's a lot of dark stuff that happens in Luke Cage, but in this season, he's kind of the one cracking some jokes here and there, and that was kind of cool to see because that is one of the things we said about Luke Cage was we wish that there was some more levity to it. Iron Fist is way too serious still for his own good, so hopefully we'll kind of see that character break that as he progresses. But as far as notable episodes go, I just hinted at a second ago, I only picked out one because it's only eight episodes, and I've shit on this show a lot, so I'm going to pick out an episode that I enjoyed, which was episode 8, which was the finale, because it signaled that the show was finally over. No, that's a joke. I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, damn.
No,
you're being, unusually harsh on this show.
No, I'm just kidding. I like episode 8. I thought it was a good culmination of the season. And, there's some stuff that happens in the main act of episode 8. And I love to see how all the characters deal with that and the aftermath of what happens throughout the season. And, we kind of follow each character back to their corner of New York to see how they're going to progress and maybe where we're going to see their characters go in their next season. And I thought that was done pretty well. So I would say episode 8 for me is notable in that regard.
Cool. It just, that last part of episode 8 really bugged me.
Like the last scene.
Come on. You're getting there. I was going to be furious if they didn't at least show it.
I thought that it would be like the after credits thing.
Oh, yeah?
I was surprised that they just put it out there.
I was going to be pissed if they tried to, obviously. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Speaking of after credits, so did you stay for after the credits for the Punisher trailer?
I haven't. I'm going to go back and watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not much to it, but I'm excited for that show.
For sure. Obviously. We're both big fans of the character. So star rating. I'm assuming you're going to be in like the 2 to 3 range by your review.
So this, honestly, I was harsh on it, and I think that I just, as we went, I kind of felt like I disliked it more than you, and I kind of had to take that role in the review. I didn't hate this show, but it's hard for me to say that I recommend it too.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, I would hate to give this show a 2.5 because I love the Daredevil stuff and I love the Luke Cage stuff, and I'm okay with the Jessica Jones stuff, but I don't know that we've put it out there. I really hate Iron Fist. But at the end of the day, like, it's still a cool concept, and it's cool that they got to do it. Man, I'm just struggling between a 2.5 and a 3. I'm going to go with a 3.
Okay. So I'm assuming it's a real soft 3, though.
Very, very soft recommend. Like, if you're not into these characters, don't fucking waste your time. But if you've been waiting for 4 years through each season to see these characters finally team up, of course I'm going to tell you to watch it. So,
okay. So I was having a hard time between 4 and 3.5, and so because of the story problems that we discussed in the weaker villain, I went with 3.5, but man, I thought we were going to be pretty much on the same page with this show.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting tired. Like, Iron Fist just took it out of me, and I'm much less forgiving, I think, at this point.
It's left you jaded, which,
yes,
again, don't watch that show. It sucks.
I feel like if I'm a defender right now, I'm Jessica Jones, because I'm just really pessimistic about the whole thing at this point.
And you have a vagina,
and that as well. You want to grab a coffee after this?
No, thank you. That's a hard pass. All right, so the last segment, each episode is just called Nerd Favorite. Hopefully it's not called Nerd Favorite for very much longer. But we have, the last couple of months, we have talked a lot about the Lion King, the live-action adaptation of the Lion King, and some of the casting news. And we've had a lot in the last couple of months. Of course, Donald Glover being Simba, Seth Rogen as Pumbaa, and then you have James Earl Jones, of course, coming back from Mufasa. And there's been so much casting notes with this. I thought we would kind of get our takes on who you think is the best as far as the casting is concerned. So your favorite casting for the Lion King adaptation. Mine, if you know me personally, should be pretty apparent. I'm going to go with John Oliver as Zazu. I really like him as a comedian. He was one of my favorite correspondents for The Daily Show way back when. I love his show Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. And I think that's kind of the perfect casting, because Zazu in The Lion King is definitely kind of the comic relief. And I think that even though obviously it's going to be just a voice acting, there's really no mocap that you can do for that character. It's definitely still takes comedic timing with that character, and I think they cast such a perfect actor for it.
Yeah, no, that's really good casting. Really, I think that most of the casting for this movie so far has been pretty spot on. I'm curious how they'll do Simba. Donald Glover was announced as Simba. I'm curious if he's doing young Simba and adult Simba, if he's just doing adult Simba. I don't know how that'll work out, so I'm curious about that. I guess my favorite, and I say this hesitantly because I don't know how well they'll do Hakuna Matata, but I would say, I guess, Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen as Timon and Pumbaa, so I'll just group them together since they're basically a tag team anyways. Between the two, I would say, surprisingly, I'd probably say Billy Eichner is Timon.
Ugh.
I know you don't like him, but I think that he's
so abrasive. His voice is awful.
Yeah, I saw him on some, I think it was maybe James Corden show this week, and whenever he's not on, he's a little bit more bearable, but he can take it to 11 really quick, and that's whenever it gets annoying.
I feel like he's just at 11 all the time.
So I'm curious to see. I thought that Nathan Lane did great as Timon, but I'm curious to see how these two do, and I can't imagine Seth Rogen singing, so I don't know how he's going to be as Pumbaa and Hakuna Matata, but
don't worry, Russell Crowe will just step in for him.
But we'll see. So there's still some spots that they obviously have to fill with this movie, and I'm curious who will play like Nala. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
For sure. So that is it for another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. Of course, you can subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. We should also mention, I think we mentioned it last episode, there will not be an episode next week because Tyler will be out of town. And so we probably should have said that at the beginning of the show, but I failed to mention it then. So there won't be an episode next week, and I don't remember what we're doing 2 weeks from now. So, yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. As always, we hope that you check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com. You can comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. Also, check out our Twitch channel, which has been quiet the last few weeks. But I'm trying to look at my schedule and see where I can do some more Twitch streams because I enjoy doing them. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. You can also email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. And finally, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
We are the Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.